Okay, let's come back to our teaching, the Protestant Reformation. In this lecture, we try to understand Cathars. We have seen several reasons for the Reformation. In that, we have seen clerical ignorance, and we have seen the pre-Reformation reformers and reform movements. Even we have studied now King Alfred and all those great giants, John Wycliffe. We have studied about John Wycliffe, John Hus, and now let's get into Cathars. Who are these Cathars? The Cathars, also known as Cathari, from the Greek Catharia, Catharoi, means pure ones, were a dualist medieval religious sect of southern France, which flourished in the 12th century and challenged the authority of the Catholic Church. Now, even in the 12th century, there were groups who challenged the structures of the Catholic Church. They were also known as Albanians from the town of Albi, which was the strong Cathar center of belief. Albi. Cathar, that individual Cathar, brought some kind of reformation, and those who followed that Cathar are called as Catharans. Cathars. So Cathar priests lived simply, had no possessions, imposed no taxes or penalties, and regarded men and women as equals. Respects of the faith, which appealed to many at the time disillusioned with the church. Cathar beliefs ultimately derived from the Persian religion of Manichaeism, but directly from another earlier religious sect from Bulgaria, known as the Bogomils, who blended Manichaeism with Christianity. I think I remember discussing about Manichaeism in our History of Christianity 1. This Manichaeism blended with Christianity. These two mixed with a kind of spiritual principles, then Cathars brought those Christian principles. These Cathars are also called as perfectis. Perfecti means those who had renounced the world, the priests and bishops. They were against the world, the possessions, the power, and everything. Perfecti. Credents. There are different groups in this. Credents, believers who still interacted with the world, but worked toward renunciation. In this Cathars, there are different groups, different levels of people. Those who had renounced the world are called as perfecti. Those who are in the world and trying to renounce the world are called as credents. And the third type of group is called sympathizers. They're called non-believers who aided and supported Cathar communities. They are not really believers, but they support the group. These are the different levels of people, three different groups in this Cathars. Cathars believe, let's look at their beliefs. Cathars believe that Satan had tricked a number of angels into falling from heaven and then escaped them in bodies. Number of angels fallen from heaven, even the Bible talks about it, and then escaped them in bodies. The purpose of life was to renounce the pleasures and enticements of the world, and through repentance, repeated incarnations. Here it's a false doctrine that they have started spreading. Through repeated incarnations, make one's way back to heaven. To this end, the Cathars observed a strict hierarchy. What is that? The Cathars, according to Catharism, all material things were created by the evil God of the Old Testament. And all spirituality was created by the good God of the New Testament. Cathars believes that humans are really angels trapped in corrupt matter and will have to be reborn until they are finally released through the purification rites. You may be wondering, why should we study this a cult? How can we say it's a Christian? It is a Christian cult because they were Christians, but they brought this Manichaeism into the Christian teaching. They blended this together. But one thing that we are studying about the Reformation, how they contribute the Reformation, they were against the popes and bishops and the Catholic Church. It's a kind of rebellion group within the Catholic Church. We are not bothered about the teaching, which is absolutely unbiblical, but their revolt to the Catholic Church, we are studying in the context of a Reformation. Cathars rejected the teachings of the Catholic Church as immoral, and most of the books of the Bible as inspired by Satan. This is what they say. Most of the biblical books are inspired by Satan. They criticize the church heavily for the hypocrisy, greed, luxury of its clergy, and the church's inquisition of land and wealth. Church's accusation of land and wealth, not surprisingly, the Cathars were condemned as heretical by the Catholic Church and massacred in the Albigensian Crusade in 1209 to 1229, which also devastated the towns, cities, and culture of southern France. So now, let's look at their beliefs that are included. Cathars' beliefs included the following. Number one, the recognition of the feminine principle in the divine. For them, God was both male and female. The female aspect of God was Sophia, means wisdom. The belief encouraged equality of the sexes in Cathar communities. Metaphysics, metaphysis means reincarnation. They believe reincarnation. A soul would be continually reborn until it renounced the world completely and escaped reincarnation. They believed cosmic duality, the existence of two powerful deities in the universe, one good God and one evil, who were in a constant state of war. The purpose of life was to serve the God, good, by serving others and escape from the cycle of rebirth and death to return home to God. The Manichaeism teaches that there is a constant war between good and evil. You know, this teaching can be seen even in the evangelical circles. I hope you remember, I mentioned there is a man here in Hyderabad who is named as, what is his name? Prophet Addanki Ranjit Ophir. For the first time in 1993, when I read his book entitled, I think 96, when I read his book entitled as Yugantam, in that book he starts with this kind of concept. A constant struggle between the good and the evil. I don't know what is his position now. People can change. But during that time, that was his position. There is a good and evil are existed from the beginning. What does it mean? Accepting two gods. Because when we think about God as only omnipresent, omniscient, and Swayambhava, because there is no beginning for God, only good has that beginning. Only God is the self-existent. If there is something else, both can become God. So he believed that kind of good and evil existed from the beginning, because he also borrowed, after reading so many things, he might have borrowed from Manichaeism or some other cults like this. why I want to say this teaching is very much prevailed even in the evangelical circles. Here and there we find that the good and evil who were in a constant state of war. The purpose of life was to serve the good by serving others and escape from the cycle of rebirth and death to return home to God. They also strictly practice vegetarianism. They are vegetarians. Though eating fish was allowed to credence and sympathizers, but not the clergy. Celibacy for perfecti. Perfectis are pure vegetarians, and perfectis are encouraged to be celibates. Celibacy is enforced on perfecti. Celibacy was also encouraged generally, since it was thought that every person born was just another poor soul trapped by the devil in a body. Marriage overall was discouraged in perfecti. The dignity of manual labor. The Cathars also worked priests as well as lay people, many as weavers, weaving the clothes. So they haven't divided full-time and part-time. They worked like tent makers. They practiced their mission. Another quite interesting thing is the dignity of manual labor and suicide, known as the ritual of Endura, as a ritual and dignified response under certain conditions. They allowed suicide under certain conditions. This is about Cathars, whose identity can